Hey guys, episode 268. Yeah, I mean, are we good? Are we
Uh,
okay? We're not okay.
well, apparently last week was the week for me to miss because I must have let everyone down because they were waiting for the wrath to be unleashed from me, and I wasn't there.
I mean, it looks like you get another chance tonight, right? I mean,
Is it worth it at this point? Because
Yes.
I guess it's so this is going to be a quick episode. There's not anything we could say that hasn't been said the past 2 weeks really. And you can start from the top with the defense is bad. Alex Lyon is way overworked. He had 15 games last season. He's over doubled his workload this season. And it's showing he was never meant to be the starting goaltender. That was Ville Husso. Ville Husso goes down, also hasn't been playing good this season. James Reimer's back and forth. You don't have your 1C. Your defense is playing terrible. You get offense some nights, not others. Coaching has been wildly I don't even know how to describe some of the coaching decisions that I've seen. They're playing dump and chase hockey. They don't do controlled zone entries, very few high danger chances. It's bad puck luck too. So on top of being terrible, they're also extremely unlucky right now. And is it me? And I know it's not just me, but like I said earlier, this team doesn't deserve to make the playoffs. They're probably not going to make the playoffs with how they're playing and how the teams around them are also playing.
Mhm.
And unless literally Dylan Larkin can save this team from the downward spiral that they are currently in, which he probably won't be back till the middle of actually he might be back Thursday. We'll see.
maybe we don't know because today was supposed to be his eval day, and it was an off day for the team, so we didn't get an answer.
But he's not going to save this team from the downward spiral, right? Like one man, unless he is literally the best player in the league and we just don't know it, or he's like the ultimate locker room presence and he rallies the entire team. Like your top performers right now are Lucas Raymond because he is hot as shit right now, amazing, worth every penny that he's going to get paid, and Christian fucking Fischer. Those are like your top players right now. And that's absolutely insane to me. And I mean, it's Larkin himself is not going to turn this whole thing around, and it sucks because of the position we were in.
The thing that pisses me off more than anything is you continue to roll the same fucking lineup out there night in and night out, not calling players up from Grand Rapids. I don't care about Berger and whatever, that's fine. He's up. But no Casper, no Edvinson, no Johansson, no Wallinder. Like what do we have those prospects down there for? If you're not going to call them up at some point and at least give them a small look. Like, it's ridiculous to see Petry and Sherratt out there turning the puck over 50 times a game. I know I'm exaggerating, but it's extremely infuriating to see those guys go back out there and out there a lot of the times against the best players on the ice. And I'm like, Jeff Petry is not the Jeff Petry from the Montreal Canadiens in 2020 or whatever it was, 2019 or sorry, 2021. He's not the same player. Okay, he turns the puck over. He has his moments when he's good, and he has his moments where he's really, really bad. And the really, really bad is outweighing the some of the good stuff that he does. Ben Sherratt has kind of reverted to the old Ben Sherratt. Why not give Justin Holl an opportunity at this point?
What's it going to hurt?
What's it going to hurt? Take Sherratt, take Petry, tell him to sit on the seventh floor.
Well, you can only do one at this point for that, so you can't do both without calling someone up. I mean, it to me right
But that's why I
now,
said call somebody up.
you call someone up, but you have a roster limit. You still have to fit in the 23. So either you're cutting a goalie, which fun fact, Husso's not back yet. So you're still with Alex Lyon, as Greg highlighted, likely overworked. This was my fear months ago that we would see a downfall of Alex Lyon because he's playing almost every single friggin' night. And look where we're at now. I think I posted it yesterday that he is 5-8 since the All-Star break. Not good.
I don't think
Not
it's
good
all
for
on
a
him
team
though.
that went on a 6-game bender. I get it. You have a James Reimer who would, like we've talked about throughout this year, has been a reliable backup to what you need. But if you're rolling 3 goalies, you're hoping you have 3 guys that are healthy. Husso ain't it. He's played one part of one game since the All-Star break.
Ryan, I'm just going to correct you real quick. According to Article 16, Section 4, the 23-man roster limit is in place from the conclusion of preseason until 12:01 a.m. on the day of the trade deadline.
Does it stop at the deadline? Okay, I'm sorry.
After the deadline, teams are allowed to have an unlimited active roster as long as the player called up takes up one of the 50 contract slots.
So they can call their guys up.
So why haven't we seen it yet? That's what pisses me off. Why haven't we seen it? If you thought that this team was good enough to make the playoffs as is, and yet they've gone into this tailspin, and I'm blaming Steve Yzerman a little bit because I'm not look, I'm not saying this is all on Steve Yzerman. Of course it's not. I'm not stupid to say that. But to say that this isn't a little bit of Steve Yzerman's fault, I'm not talking about the trade deadline now. I'm talking about post-trade deadline when you see that this team is in a tailspin. Like, instead of saying, okay, Joe Veleno is going to be the starting opening center on line 1, let's call up Marco Kasper and put him in on as the third line center and kind of shift it up that way. Why is Joe Veleno getting those minutes? And I know they've shifted the lines and stuff like that, but those are the kind of things you second guess. And I'm sorry, it's fair to second guess Steve Yzerman once in a while. Obviously, he's a great general manager. We're not going to say he's not, but is he perfect? Is every move that he makes or every move that he doesn't make perfect? No, because nobody's perfect. So my point is if you weren't going to do anything at the trade deadline, and they were very, very cautious, which is okay, fine, whatever. That they went in that direction, that's fine with me. Then you have to call people up. You have to call people up, and I'm not saying you call one guy up and say, "Okay, you're the savior." No, you call them up to mix it up a little bit, to shake the mix up. You can't do it at the trade deadline because now that's over. So now you could do it by sending a message to the locker room by saying, "Hey, Jeff Petry, come sit on the 7th floor and watch your teammates play." Or, "Hey, Ben Sherratt, I know you had a good first half of the season, but it's kind of slid now. You can go take a seat, and a younger guy like Simon Edvinsson, a first-round pick, will come in and take your spot until you're ready to start playing properly again." Dylan Larkin's going to come back. You can't expect him to be the savior, but I do think if there's one guy in the NHL, Dylan Larkin is one of those guys that as soon as he comes back into the lineup, I think they start winning again.
Well, they kind of have to, because I posted this
it's
as
getting
well.
a little late.
Well, not only that, but to hit that 92-point mark, Detroit has to win 9 of their final 14 games. In case you've forgotten, they've lost 7 of 8. While I agree with you, Tyler, at what cost is calling up these guys to your AHL affiliate and guys that are trying to also fight for a secondary championship? Because while I agree that there are some guys that could potentially come up and outperform what we're seeing, is it going to be that much of an improvement? We don't know. It's a wild card. Now, to the point that Yzerman made at the intermission of the Arizona game, you would think these guys that are on the cusp from Grand Rapids to Detroit would come in and make an impact. Either a Johansson, as you mentioned, Simon Edvinsson. Is it a Marco Casper? Is it a Carter Mazur? Are there a handful of these guys? Hello, Willie Wallinder. Are there some of these guys that could come into Detroit and improve this team? He's got 4 call-ups. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, one of them has already been used for Berge. He's got 3 left. Do you feel, of those guys named, they make this team better to push them into the playoffs? And then, are they capable, if they help this team get into the playoffs, of maintaining a level of play to compete at an even higher level? Because that's the issue you're going to run into.
I don't think it's necessary. We've lost 8 of 9, Ryan. Not 7 of 8.
Well,
it's worse than that. But I don't think it's necessary. I think we had said that at the beginning of the season, could they be a playoff team? Sure. It looked like on paper they had, especially with the teams around them, they had the ability to do it. Were we expecting them to be? No, we were expecting them to fight for the playoffs in March, which they are doing. Granted, the fight is like not happening. They're struggling for a spot in March, but making it in is right now would be the goal. Make it into the playoffs. Any bonus hockey is bonus hockey. You could make it in and then immediately send those guys back down to the AHL. And then they could go to Grand Rapids and play. It's about getting those points to make it in. I don't care. You put Sherratt and Petry back into the playoffs, whatever, you get blown out, you get swept in 4 games. I don't care. But you can't go into every game now, which they've done besides the game that they just won against the Sabres, looking like you don't care about the game, about playing. They played the first period against the Penguins, they played well. The second period of the Penguins, they played well. And then they gave up. They just
they played well against the Pens for about 18 minutes. And then all of a sudden they find themselves down 3-1 going into
this. And it's when the other team scores, they're like, oh, guess we're done now.
Played well in the Vegas game too.
I'm not sure. It is, again, and a lot of people immediately when the streak started, when we started losing, said fire Lalonde. Get him out.
Why is that the immediate reaction?
1, they need someone to blame. And 2, they need to take it to the most extreme side of blaming that person, is to fire him.
Because he didn't change anything in terms of his coaching style. Nothing changed in terms of what they were trying to execute. The team is now, they've lost their way. I mean, what's sad is that Larkin apparently was that big of a deal to this. Because even with him, they've had a couple of small streaks of losing streaks. Nothing that was remotely close to this. You could argue when he was out for his injury, when he took the hit to the back of the head after Ottawa, and then you also had Perron out, and I think Compher was out for a small part of that. That was probably their worst stretch of hockey going through. But now, like, everyone's healthy. What is the difference between, I get it, Larkin is a fast hockey player. He plays at arguably an elite level. When JT Compher, we saw what he can do when he plays hard for a full game on that win against Buffalo on Saturday. That doesn't happen consistently enough for him to be considered to be one of the top players on this team. Is he a good player? Absolutely. Is he consistently at the level he needs to be? To me, as a fan watching this thing, no. And especially when your top player goes out, you need to step up in some fashion. He's got the talent to do it. We saw it. We've seen it at different times this season. When he is skating hard, it's the same thing with Andrew Copp. If there was an extra gear that these guys could find consistently, they'd be top, argued some of the best 2 seasons in the hockey.
I think that you hit on part of it, in that it's their style of play that they want to implement with the people they have does not work. Dumping it in and waiting for your guy to catch up to it, when according to NHL Edge, you're in the bottom 50% of the league in top skating speed. You're in the bottom half of the league in speed bursts over 20 miles an hour. You're in the bottom half of the league in shots on goal. It's offensive zone time. You're in the bottom half of the league. You're not fast enough, and you don't have, once you get there, you cough the puck up too often to be able to play that style. You can't do it. You need controlled zone entry. And it looks like the only person that wants to skate into the zone with the puck is Mo Seider. And he's a defenseman. And he shouldn't have to do that.
Or Lucas Raymond.
That's where you lose. That's where losing Dylan Larkin is huge, though, right there. Because
possession.
He going into the zone, he rips into that zone, and no one's stopping. It's like Datsuk, except Datsuk was like a surgeon with a scalpel going into the zone, where Larkin is at top end speed, and he still backs off the defense.
And that's what I think drives me nuts about some of these guys, is that you can tell that they're older players because their immediate default coming up to that blue line, or even the red line for that matter, is I'm going to throw the puck around the boards. Whether or not someone's there to retrieve
and then there's never anyone there, Ryan.
That's what drives me. I love Perron all day. We highlighted how great he had been during the streak in particular, really since the turn of the year up until this awful stretch, is that he was actually kind of abandoning the way that he was so accustomed to, and that was just dump and chip. Because when you've got a guy like him going in for your possession grab or going for puck retrievals, I should say, he's an expert at it. But when he's the one that's just sending the puck around the boards, it's like the communication has died for this team the last. And I don't understand how losing one person eliminated all of this, because most of these guys have played together in some fashion throughout the season and have done particularly well. But now that seems to be like, nah, I'm not gonna do it. And I can't understand what flipped. Like, I get it. And Mickey made the comment the other night for the game is that Pittsburgh eliminated the middle of the ice. Okay, cool. Why couldn't Detroit do that? What was so wrong with them being just fundamentally sound to eliminate Pittsburgh putting 40 plus shots up on net on them? Because that's playoff hockey. Instead, they're just going run and gun and they're firing the puck around the boards. They're going and chasing after it. I'm just putting my tweet on fucking repeat at this point of dump, chase, what is it? Freaking dump, chase, repeat, dump, chase, repeat. But your dump and chase ends up being you chasing the other team out of their own zone because they recover the puck because you have no one fucking there to get it.
I feel like their forecheck blows too. Their
Oh, it's
forecheck
terrible.
without
What
Dylan
forecheck?
Larkin blows.
They have none. Like I said, like, you go back to Kopp and Compher. Like, when Kopp engages himself, he's one of the top two-way centers in hockey, arguably. Is he good offensively? Yeah. But defensively, when he is skating after someone aggressively, he can't be stopped. And we've seen that on the penalty kill. Him and Compher on the PK in particular, a great duo. But
Yeah.
why aren't they doing that in the offensive? Because now I'm questioning the scheme. Because we see the same thing too far more often than not. No, like, you look at some of these teams that we struggle mightily against, the Rangers, the Hurricanes in particular. I always go back to them. What are they doing to us when we're trying to break out of our...
Stifling defense.
They're what?
Stifling defense. They
Stifling.
just play hard.
But it's with their
defense.
forwards. That's the
Yeah,
problem.
everyone.
They are putting pressure on you behind your own net, forcing you into their trap or what they've got set up through the middle of the ice. Because they know that they've got the speed to, one, put you in an awkward position, and then two, make you do a forced pass up the middle that you're likely not going to connect on. Now you've got the puck back and you're pushing in for an odd-man rush.
It's the difference between forcing a team to make a mistake and waiting for a team to make a mistake. The Red Wings try to wait out the team. They try to let the team take all the time in the offensive zone that they want until they mess up. The teams like the Hurricanes force the mistakes. They're on you constantly. They're body checking. They're poking the puck. They're playing the player and the puck instead of playing the lane. They're constantly trying to make you make a mistake. Now, will that sometimes lead to goals against? Sure. Will that sometimes lead to odd man rushes? Sure. But what you're doing is also leading to goals against and odd man rushes. So you have to try something new. And that's where I think the coaching piece comes in, is that how stubborn do you have to be to not change anything and then just come out afterwards or during intermission and say, yeah, I mean, there's a couple problems and I see what's happening here. And I mean, I think the guys played pretty good and put up a solid effort, and the score sheet really didn't reflect that. Like, that's the problem. The score sheet didn't reflect that. So at what point do you stop it? Do you take it off loop and do you try something different? Because they try to say they don't look at the other teams around the league and don't look at the scores and don't look at the standings.
That's
You should
bullshit.
probably start looking at the standings, because if you're not, you're going to be very shocked when you do look at the standings. If you don't change something, you are absolutely not making the playoffs. It's not going to happen because you dropped way too much, way too quickly.
Yeah, I'll say one thing about the coaching staff, and it's not just Lalonde. To the people that saying fire Lalonde, like, stop with that, please. However, I am willing to entertain the conversation of blaming the coaching staff for part of this skid. And the reason why I say that is not just the fact that they've lost 7 of 8 or 8 of 9 or whatever the fuck it's been, but the fact of the matter is, yes, what you talked about of not forechecking properly and not doing the little things correctly, that's on the player. Okay, that is also on the coaching staff as well. However, the not give a shit and the not being motivated to play a team like Colorado or a team like Florida, although the Florida game was pretty decent, but at Vegas, like, how are you not motivated to play at Buffalo, the fucking Sabres who suck. Then you play Arizona, another game at home in front of your great hometown fans here in Hockeytown, and you lose 4-1 to the Coyotes at home. And then finally you win a game at home against Buffalo, and then you go back to Pittsburgh and drop it again. They don't give a shit. And I'm not calling out every single player. There are the players that come to play every night, but there are
Ryan,
players
you
on
leave
this
Lucas
team.
Raymond alone.
There are players on this team that do not give a shit right now. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it has to do with their ice time or whatever it is, but they do not give a shit. They turn the puck over and they're casual. Everything is casual. They don't do anything hard. And again, losing tends to snowball. It sucks. It tends to snowball. And yes, losing Dylan Larkin is key because he's your captain, he's your leader, and all that good stuff. But if you lose one player and that's your entire team, that just shows that your team's not that good. And back to the point of zone entry, Patrick Kane needs to stop dumping the puck too. He's a guy that can go into the zone and back off a defender and get into the zone every time. There shouldn't be any problem with Patrick Kane entering the zone.
More often than not, when he's trying to enter the zone, he's got 3 guys that come bearing down on him. So him dumping the puck, you would think is going to open up a lane for someone to, like DeBrincat, go down and chase and go into the puck in the corner. The problem is when our guys are entering the zone that are dumping it in, there's no one near them. Whether it's nearby to dump and then there's a guy coming right off your hip, essentially, not off your hip, but within a couple feet, to go get that puck in the corner, or when they're sending it around, they're not putting shit on it to actually make it around to the guy that's on the far boards, because you see the guy that's set up over there. But they also, the other teams, a mind-blowing moment, have figured out what you're going to try to do. Because if you watch where the defensemen are, one's pinching you off, the other one's pushing around the boards, and guess what? Goalie pops out, he stops the puck. If he doesn't get it, there's a guy waiting below the face-off dot along the boards, waiting to take your dump-in pass, because everyone's fucking figured out what you're trying to do. This isn't rocket science. Sports, things work for a while, then you have to adjust. Detroit has failed to adjust. They're trying the same shit, the same group of guys that's not being effective. And guess what? They're losing hockey games because of it.
Yep. And where that has led, and right before we take a break, whereas that has led, updated as of, let's see, that was this morning via Greg Wyshynski per StatLeaks. Current odds to make the Stanley Cup playoffs, the Red Wings are currently at 20.3% chance to make the playoffs. The Islanders have jumped to 51.2%.
A week ago, Detroit was at what, 75?
I don't think we made it that far. I know we made it into at least the mid 60s.
No, I thought I saw 75% to me.
That Islanders team sucks.
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a quick break. Word from DraftKings. We're gonna come back and we're gonna talk about some of those prospects and how they're doing, the ones that we could bring up, because Steve Yzerman said, "Hey, I'm not making any trades because we've got the talent in the system." And where's it at? Because you're not calling it up to Detroit. So we're gonna take a second for word from DraftKings. We're gonna come back and talk about some of the prospects that should be in the system or on the team within the next few seasons. We know hockey games move fast, but with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, you can score faster than anything happening on the ice. This week, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. And right now, we might be taking the Red Wings to lock up that second wild card position in the East. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app with code THPN. New customers bet just $5 on the NHL and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPENY or text HOPENY 467369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-878-9777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/hockey for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. Copyright NHL 2024. All rights reserved. And we're back. We got, it's just like I can't do it tonight, Ryan. I'm not gonna do an enthusiastic and we're back.
Suck.
We're gonna talk about some of the prospects that are in juniors. They're in Grand Rapids. They're guys that I think even now could probably help. It couldn't obviously make them any worse than they currently are. And we're going to start with Nate Danielson. Nate Danielson this season has split between the Brandon Wheat Kings and was traded to the Portland Winterhawks. In 26 games played in Brandon, he had 12 goals and 14 assists for 26 points. In 26 games for Portland, he has 12 goals and 25 assists for 37 points. That puts him at 63 points on the season so far in 52 games. So 63 points, 52 games. He is a plus 18. The dude is just killing it. I mean, you watch him and he scores at will. He is a phenomenal playmaker. His skating is fantastic. He can carry the puck into his zone. That's something he can do. And you watch him and you go, this is a kid. And you look at the style of his play and how smart he is out there. And this is your future 1B, I think, center. You thought it would probably be Marco Kasper at the 2C position. I think that Nate Danielson, his floor is probably a 2C. I think his ceiling is a 1B center. I don't think there's very much wiggle room at all there. Just a phenomenal player.
Yeah, he has a play style that reminds you of a young Dylan Larkin. And that's fantastic. Now, the caveat, I guess you could argue there is that, okay, if he's a young Dylan Larkin, why isn't he in Detroit? But again, this is a team with actual. When Larkin came in, this was a fringe playoff team. Arguably the same situation. We were impressed by what we saw with Danielson in the preseason. And hell, I would say you'd have a split on the fan base that Danielson was potentially ready to crack the roster. I think he probably could have performed early. But the way that he has played after getting traded and how things have gone to this point, to me, as a fan, you hope that this coming season he's cracking this roster. And you know what? It's going to be just fine if he makes it on the wing because that's not going to hurt a single damn thing because we saw
How Larkin
split.
transitioned in.
Larkin transitioned in. We saw with Rasmussen. Granted, he still does get a lot of wing time. But you know what? That's fine because he's on a great line with Kopp and Fischer right now. You could say it's their most effective and dangerous line because of the pressure they bring night in and night out. But as we've seen how this roster's gone, you can't have too many centers. And we've talked about this before. You go back to the times of Yzerman. How many guys were on the wing that were a center? This is what you do. You know, and you know why you build it that way because you know they're going to be responsible defensively. But when they're also a dangerous threat with the puck, that's where you get all that bang for the buck. And for a team that needs, for one, speed, and two, just a guy to really just have that extra gear, Danielson fits that mold. And hey, fun fact, he's a righty. So you can't really be upset about that part either.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, Danielson's one of those guys that I feel like could make an impact on this team right now. Obviously, that's not going to be the case because Portland is probably a playoff team, right, in the WHL. So they'll be in the WHL, was it the Memorial Cup playoffs and all that good stuff. So
they're not going to call him up regardless anyways, but
yeah, they're not going to call him up. So this is a next year kind of problem, or not really problem, but this is what you have to look forward to for Danielson. So we'll see what happens with it, but I mean, he's definitely one of those guys that you'll be looking forward to seeing in training camp next year and in the preseason and hopefully early in the season next year. Because I don't see him going to Grand Rapids. I see him cracking the roster next year. He doesn't seem like the type of player that needs Grand Rapids. He's a first round pick, and usually first round pick very rarely play in the AHL. I feel like it's usually junior, and then you make the NHL roster, or you go back to junior for a year or two.
Yeah, he has 16 points in his last 10 games played, and they've only lost 2 of their last 10. They've got literally the reverse Red Wings problem right now, apparently. And yeah, Danielson, I think you said it. He could have probably made the roster this season and been fine and got probably mid 6 minutes. But you didn't want to have the Michael Rasmussen issue to where when they're here, and you're not really going to send them back down. And you figured that with Racity probably could have played in the AHL his first season. Danielson absolutely could have played in the AHL, but again, the CHL agreement is garbage. He had to play in juniors or on the Red Wings. And Steve Yzerman, not in Ken Holland fashion, made the smart move of saying, well, if this team's not great, I don't want to waste him and ruin his development. And I'd rather him go have a leadership role in the junior league and just really push for playoffs and push for a championship down there. So he stayed in the WHL this season, but like you said, I think he could be in Detroit next season if things go his way and a roster spot opens up. We're gonna take a look at Marco Kasper. Marco Kasper right now, he's listed as 6'1", 183 pounds. I feel like he's probably heavier than that. This season in Grand Rapids, 56 games played, 11 goals, 16 assists for 27 points. You say you need physicality, you need smart hockey play, you need a guy to drive through the center of the ice. Marco Kasper's a fucking wrecking ball. He pisses people off. He is not dirty, but he's aggressive. And that's the style of play. Again, that's something you're missing. It's like if Michael Rasmussen would hit people. Rasmussen is taller, doesn't really hit people. Marco Kasper, that's what he does. He gets in people's faces. He pisses them off, but he's also
Good shot. One of the two, either one.
But he's insanely cerebral. So I think he has. If you were to look at like piss people off like Brady Tkachuk, I think Marco Kasper could do that. But I think Marco Kasper, his vision is probably better. His goal scoring is not the same, but I think his vision is better. So Kasper's a guy, again, you could play him right now in the Red Wings at 3C and probably improve this team. It would at least give you stability at the center position. I appreciate Austin Czarnik for what he does. Marco Kasper's a better player. And you could play Compher as 1C, you could play Casper at 2C if you wanted, put Veleno at 3. But it gives you more options than just rolling with the vet in Czarnik, even though he does provide the stability. I think Casper provides the talent above that. Is it a risk? Sure, but I think right now you're losing every game, so it's a risk you can take.
Yeah, I don't think it's much of a risk at this point. I mean, like what's going to happen? They're just not going to make the playoffs. You're not going to stunt his development by him playing a couple games in the NHL. You know, they'll just send it back down to the AHL. So I don't see any point. I don't see any problem in that. And then, you know, you're not just going to make the playoff, or you're not going to miss the playoffs because of him. You know, what do you have to lose at this point? I guess is my question.
Confidence. Faith
That can be rebuilt. I mean, and it's not like he hasn't played in the NHL before. That he came up.
You say that
year.
he's not going to cost this team a playoff spot, but the moment you see him come out in a bad pass, or you have a couple turnovers, and boom, now you have 2 goals against. Look what happened to Berggren. Bad turnovers led to multiple big goals against during this streak. And guess what? He got benched. You could argue that the benching, or scratch, if you will, was partly due to the fact that if he plays one more game, he has to pass through waivers. Maybe that's why he's still being scratched. But you could argue one way or against that he didn't look good. And that's a guy that is their leading scorer for Grand Rapids. A guy that we have been banging on the door for pretty much all of the season, because honestly, there's times where I think that he absolutely could be better than a $4 million Robbie Fabry. But the little bit of time that he does have, that he came out and drew some great penalties. He helped the team out in different ways, but he also cost him. Are you going to be okay bringing in a Casper and seeing those types of fuck ups, and then still being like down with the fact that it may have cost this team by letting in some goals because of bad play on his behalf? Now they're not in the playoff. Is that something you're okay with?
I guess my point is, if Larkin doesn't come back soon enough, I mean, you're going to miss the playoff anyhow. So
that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking if you want to bring these guys up, see them fail, which then cost this team a game or several games because of poor performance, on top of what we've already seen from the veterans on this team. Are you okay losing out in the playoffs because guys that you want up so badly, which don't get me wrong, I do too, guys that you want up so badly that are in a playoff push in Grand Rapids, now you put them in a playoff push in the NHL, they fail. This team thusly fails and misses the playoffs partly because of that. That's something you'd be okay with.
Yep, because you're getting the bad play now anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm okay
Fair.
with it. And the other thing that I'll say just quickly, I have the utmost respect for Grand Rapids and any other AHL or ECHL team. But when the NHL team needs somebody and they want somebody, they're going to get that player. Whether the AHL team kicks and screams and the fan base kicks and screams, that's just how it goes. So I don't want to hear about, oh, Grand Rapids is in a playoff push. Well, yeah, so is Detroit. And guess who makes more money? The Red Wings more than the Griffins. So again, that's nothing against Grand Rapids. It's nothing against the fan base or anything like that. I'm just saying when the National Hockey League team comes calling and they want their players, they're going to get their players.
So Marco Kasper in the last 10 games, he has 5 points and he's an overall plus player. He plays, like you said, that hard defensive style hockey to be able to get the puck and either clear the zone or drive it up ice to start a chance. So that's the kind of guy that they need. We're going to look at Carter Mazur. Carter Mazur, 21 years old, 6 foot, 170 pounds. Right now in Grand Rapids, 50 games played, has 15 goals, 16 assists for 31 points. Again, that's the bulldog. That's your Tyler Bertuzzi replacements, what we've called him from the beginning. The offensive upside is absolutely there. He started the season hurt. He was, I think, our dark horse at the beginning of the season to make the roster. I think if he didn't hurt his leg, that it probably would have happened. I don't think his development would have been hurt at all by starting on a bottom 6 or mid 6 role. But the offense is there, the grit is there, the determination is there for Carter Mazur, and he's going to beat you up. He's going to take the puck and he's going to go net it. That's what he's going to do. And again, a kind of guy you could use right now for nothing but roster flexibility. He's like if Christian Fischer had hands. I think that's one of the things. Like Christian Fischer scored some goals, but like Christian Fischer's a goofy leader type guy who's like really like a lightning bolt out there. He's going, he's hitting people, he's blocking shots, he's killing penalties. I think Mazur can do a lot of that same kind of stuff, but just up a level. Like I think I think his ceiling is probably a second line guy and his floor is probably a third line player. I think it's just consistency for him. And he's performing extremely well since coming back from injury, which is exactly what we hoped he would do.
Yeah, he is one. So the Griffins have played 57 games. He missed 7 games. So it's one of those that you look at him and Casper and really several of the guys in Grand Rapids, and you see this little asterisk next to their name. They are performing out as rookies for this team, Casper included. And I'm surprised yet not surprised, but it goes back to, again, the comments made by Eiserman. You mentioned that there's guys that you can bring up. Zarnik's not impacting those 4 call-ups. Berge is. We've named off 2 guys in particular that I think could be impactful, especially in your bottom 6. If Casper was called up, I would not be upset with him in the bottom 6. If Mazur was called up, I wouldn't be upset with him on the bottom. Exactly to your point. Danielson is obviously not happening. I understand that. I'm okay with that. I am looking forward to training camp and what he brings to this team come the fall. But you're looking at 2 guys that play with pace, that are aggressive, but they also have hands and know how to dish the puck off and score. Will it translate to the NHL at this point of the season? I don't know. But why aren't you trying when you've become so stagnant as a team where you've got your veteran players? I get it. The focus should be on defense. But you've got guys that play a two-way style game that could be impactful for what you're trying to accomplish. And when it comes to playoff hockey, you need your forwards to be defensively sound. These are the type of guys that could do that. And guess what? They're not afraid to mix it up, like you said. We saw it in a brief glimpse when Casper was playing with a broken knee against Toronto last season. He's not afraid of who you are. Maybe Ryan Reeves might be the exception on a Toronto team for this season. But at the same time, it doesn't matter. He was getting in their face, pissing them off, and he looked good doing it. This is the swagger for this team is missing right now with something like that. And I think that's what's the most frustrating. whether it's the forward core or the defensive.
For every Tomas Yurko or every player that comes up that doesn't pan out, that was a high pick, people get disappointed. I feel like at this point in time, there's these guys were picked where they were picked for a reason, right? They were picked where they were picked for a reason, and the belief that these guys would come up at some point from the AHL or from junior and make an impact. So if it's now, it's now. What difference does it make whether it's next year or now? If they come up now and they make a good, I mean, I guess you can argue the contract sliding and all that good stuff. We can get into that if you want to, but take that out of it just for 1 second. What difference does it make whether it's next fall or it's now that they make an impact? What if Casper comes here and he's 10 points in 8 games? I'm not saying that's going to happen. What if Mazur comes in and he's a great third line winger and he meshes well with some of the guys on the team? Like you just don't know, and obviously we don't know what would happen in those instances that those two guys get called up or one of the defensemen gets called up. But the risk at this point is, okay, yeah, maybe you shake their confidence, maybe you take away from Grand Rapids a little bit, but at the end of the day, if it helps you make the playoffs and it helps you develop that player a little bit further, maybe even accelerated development, then hey, you know what? That's a win. And like I said, for every player that didn't make it and was quote unquote ruined, there are those special players that can come into the National Hockey League and make an impact right away and continue to make an impact.
Carter Mazur, 8 points in his past 10 games for the Grand Rapids Griffins. The person we're going to talk about now is a position that is, again, just not been great. Sebastian Kosa, 6'6", 229 pounds, and 29 games played in Grand Rapids. He has a 2.58 goals against and a 9.11 save percentage. If you look at his games in Toledo last season, 46 games played, he had a 2.56 goals against and a 9.13 save percentage. So he's very close to what he did in the ECHL. At the AHL level, people were worried about Kosa coming in. People had called Kosa a bust. Those people have all shut up. He has out goalied some of the top goalies, including Jesper Wallstedt, in the AHL this season. And he just continues to roll. And the thing I think about him is that you don't shake Sebastian Kosa's confidence. If there's one thing Kosa has, it's that near arrogant level of confidence in himself.
That's
But
not near. That's not near arrogant. He's an
it's elite
arrogant
levels.
motherfucker, and it's fantastic.
It's elite levels of arrogant confidence in himself. But he's got the play to back it up right now. He's incredibly athletic. He's fast in the crease. I think we had said he's probably the opposite of Trey Augustine right now, where Augustine's a little bit more controlled, a little bit more poised. I think Kosa is more active, but in being more active, he's not leaving those gaps. He's really come into his own in the AHL. He looks like he could probably either be a full-time starter, which I almost would consider him. He's probably a 1B right now with Hutch, or a 1A, 1B with Hutchinson, but he could come into Detroit in a backup role. I could see it as soon as next season, him in a backup role at some point, probably not to start, but during the season, as long as his development keeps going the way it is. And he's helped bring this Grand Rapids team to the playoffs. It's a really long, strong stretch of games where they had, like, I think points in like 17 home games. They at least had a point. And it was,
I think 17 or 16 or 17 games in general.
It wasn't home games. Yeah, it was just games.
Yeah. Well, they've been stellar lately after kind of a slow start to the season, and Kosa's really helped along with that. So again, goalie, weak position right now. Lyon's flailing. Reimer's on and off. Husso's injured all the time. That's some stability you could really use. It's not going to happen because that's the one position where you absolutely don't want to ruin confidence, but it's the stability Detroit could use.
No, this is a situation where you hope that he is making people really think this fall. And if that's the situation you're in with him being a rookie skater in Grand Rapids this year, so him and Hutch literally are 1A, 1B. Kosa's got 29 games, Hutch has 28. So they're combined, they're doing a pretty solid job, and their numbers are actually pretty similar. but Kosa actually has him across the board. And that is, I think, right now, your point about all the haters from last season, because Kosa went to Toledo. Were we upset and bothered by it a little bit? Kind of. Yes and no. It depends on which way you wanted to look at it. Mainly because I think we had the rose-colored glasses on at the start of the season, thinking that Kosa is going to come right in and just make noise in Grand Rapids, because we looked at the situation and it seemed like that was going to be the case. But the way things played out, like you just said, and really you look back to Horkoff and Iserman and what they've preached, everything for him that they've been hoping for is playing out in front of us. He's playing a lot of minutes, a lot of hockey. Has he been in the crease as much this year as last year? No. But you know what? It's a completely different animal between the ECHL and the AHL. He had 46 games last season for Toledo. This year he's at 29 for Grand Rapids. But you know what? That's okay. The numbers look the same. He's making this look like what he's done his entire career. And all we can hope for in Detroit, and you can see the impatience coming through like no other now. And I get it. I bitch plenty game to game, because that's what I do, is react in the moment of the game. But after about 24 to 48 hours, as long as it's not a back to back, I come back down to reality and realize, hey, we've got a lot of guys like this that are damn close to completely changing how we look at this team. And this one in particular, Sebastian Kosa, is one of them. And guess what? That's good, because it's not going to mean a one-off year where you're hoping that they make the playoffs. Is it going to make things a lot more interesting? Yeah. But now I say all that to also reemphasize the fact that this team needs better defensemen. Guess what? We have those two coming in the wings. No pun intended. They're about to be here. Do we want them in the playoffs this season? Fucking right we do. Because you know what? Haven't had that taste for a long time, and I want my ears to be ringing inside LCA. But you know, at the same time, Kosa, Edinson, Johansson, Wallinder, Axel Sandin Pellikka, Carter Mazur, Nate Danielson, Marco Kasper, Amadeus Lombardi. Handful of guys that are in your system right now. Where do you think Nikita Kucherov came from? Where did Braden Point come from? Where did Andrei Vasilevsky?
They all played in Syracuse.
Development. Took them a while to break that roster. Didn't say a while, but it took them took them steps in progress to get there. You end up having they forced the hand of Iserman to make trades. Vasilevsky in particular. Remember Ben Bishop? See ya. You sent guys out to make things happen. When we start seeing that happen, it could be this summer, in this fall. That's where you know this team is at a different. They're not there yet, but goddamn, they're close.
They're at a different point than they were the last couple of years, though. They're definitely in a better position. Obviously, you look at the standings and they're right there. Take the skid out of it, but I'll say one thing. This team is still within striking distance of the postseason if they can just put a couple of games together where they can get their confidence back. And all of a sudden you have players like JT Compher scoring goals and Patrick Kane scoring goals again. That was good to see him score a goal on Saturday. In a really good play by Compher, by the way. But overall, they're still in it. It doesn't feel like they're still in it. I know it's doom and gloom on this podcast, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I know I use that all the time, and you guys give me shit for it, but you really are starting to see the beam at the end of the tunnel, where there's, to your point, the beam of light. Ryan, just humor me for a second. You're starting to see these prospects come, and they're getting developed, and some of them obviously are still in juniors and some of them are still overseas still, but you're going to see them come over here and make an impact. And when they do make an impact, it's not just like a small Jonathan Berger impact. It's going to be like a Dylan Larkin size impact, a Mo Sider kind of impact, a player, Lucas Raymond type of impact, where they're players and they're blue chip prospects, and they come up and they make an impact right away. And that's when you're going to know that, okay, this team and this core is ready to contend for the playoffs every single year, but not just contend for the playoffs. And that's when you take that next step to becoming a Stanley Cup contender year in and year out, like the Tampas, like the Bostons, like the Torontos now. Obviously, the Leafs have had their woes in the playoffs, but, they have that team and they're in the playoffs every year typically now. They don't go far, but you get the point. In the Western Conference, now you have Vegas and you have Colorado, and those teams are typically fighting for the Stanley Cup every year now. So, and the last 2 Stanley Cup champs are Vegas and Colorado. So there you go. Both of them out of the Western Conference. Edmonton will have something to say about that, I think, this year. But again, my point is you're going to see that jump to where the prospects are making an impact, to where they get a little bit older. And yeah, maybe you have to say goodbye to some of the players that you love. But then that's when you become, okay, now we're looking for that one piece or those 2 pieces to put us over the top that makes us a Stanley Cup contender and keeps us there.
Look for that beam, Ryan. Find the beam.
Right.
The beam at the end of the tunnel. The
The
last
LED
guy.
light at the end of the
Hold on real
tunnel.
quick. I was gonna say you should already be expecting to be free. I shouldn't say be free, but if you're not an Yzerman fan, or even if you are, if you don't understand Yzerman's past, go that way with it. You should be very much expecting to see someone that you appreciate and like a lot on this team to be gone, particularly this summer.
Yeah. Oh, before we get to the last prospect of the night, we just want to make note that incessant guy on Twitter, friendly stranger with the stupid seal picture, has been exposed as a Senators burner account just to troll Red Wings fans. So don't interact with that person anymore.
I could have told you that a long time ago not to interact with him, Greg.
Sens burner. Last person we're going to talk about is Simon Edvinsson, 6'6", 209 pounds, and 52 games played with the Grand Rapids Griffins, has 8 goals and 21 assists for 29 points. In his past, now he was injured for a decent stretch, but in his past 10 games, he has 4 points, 2 goals, 2 assists. And the dude is he's too good for the AHL. He should be in the NHL right now. He'd probably slot in directly as a second pair. I'd put him second pair with probably, I don't know, Olli Mata. Just slide Olli Mata to the right and do a second pair of Edvinsson and Mata. Ghost and Cider up top. And then Schrott and fuck all on the bottom pair.
Wallman?
Yeah, you got, Wallman was in last game. So you would do Wallman and Cider up top. Then your bottom pair would be Ghost and Schrott. And then Petry would sit. I mean, that still sucks, but putting Edvinsson in makes it better.
Yeah, but now you're burying Sherratt toward the final pair with a guy that's kind of mobile. I feel like Ghost has gotten slower.
He has. He's also gotten where he started good defensively. We're like, this is great because Shayne Gostisbehere almost never plays defense. And then we're like, wait, no, stop. Start doing it again. But Simon Edvinsson is phenomenal skater near elite level skating. Great hockey IQ. And we bring that up a lot. Yzerman's drafted a lot of high hockey IQ players, but he's big and he's physical and he's throwing people 3 feet into the air and he just makes things happen. And we thought, well, he's going to be like the reverse Cider, I think is what we initially said. Like he'll probably suffer a little bit defensively, but pick up for the offense that Mo doesn't have. But I've seen really good defense out of Simon Edvinsson. So his game is really rounding out, kind of like Mo's game rounded out at the NHL level. If he didn't have the insane usage that he has currently, you would see those offensive numbers for Mo pick up. But since his primary role right now is being started in the defensive zone and is told to get the puck out, the offensive numbers kind of stagnate for Mo. But Simon has now the offense and the defense to where down the road when your top pair is Edvinsson Cider, that's going to be some crazy stuff. That's going to be absolutely crazy because if you've got Edvinsson Cider, Wallman, Pelika, and you've got Wallinder, Johansson, that's
if none of them get traded. But yes,
night and day better than what we currently. That would be currently better than what we have now if you just played all of them. But like for the future, them being all that young is just right in that window, and it's really exciting to think about. So Simon Edvinsson, Yzerman had mentioned like, hey, there's guys that we could have got at the deadline, but we would have to trade assets for them. And we've got those guys in Grand Rapids right now that we don't have to trade assets for. we'll bring them up because we're waiting. And you said these things. We have you on camera saying these things.
And you know what the difference is, though, is that to that point of what he said, is most of these guys that you would have seen him trade for, you're not going to see him next year. That's, I think, the biggest sticking point to all of this, because all of these young guys that we're talking about, they're under team control for another 4, 5, 6 years. These other guys that they would have had to trade for, lose potential first, second, third round picks, and maybe even prospects on top of it, you don't have that. You don't have that luxury. Now you're just hoping that they come back. And if you don't make the playoffs, or you do, even if you do make the playoffs, now it's just like, okay, cool, great, I love it, but how much are you going to cost me now? So this is the frustrating part of where this team is at in terms of its development. They've improved every single year under Steve Yzerman. The proof is there. Just look at the stat line, you look at the goals, you look at the record. It's all there. They still have, according to the Athletic, the number 2 ranked prospect pool in the NHL. It's going to happen. All these things that we're hoping for are going to happen. But it goes back to the one, what's the word? What's the one word that Yzerman has said since day one?
Patient.
There it is. Thank you. You say 2 words.
No, I said luck.
Oh, no, patient, Tyler.
It does come down to luck, though, too, because
Well, yeah, these guys need to be good.
Just look at teams like the Buffalo Sabres and the Columbus Blue Jackets, and teams that have seem to be rebuilding for the last 10 years. I know Columbus had their stretch for a little while. There's teams, and I'm not saying that the Wings are one of those. I think that their prospect pool is legit, and I think even people that were questioning their prospect pool last fall and throughout last season are now starting to say, you know what, maybe this prospect pool and the Yzer plan really is kind of starting to come together. And I believe that. I never was one to say, oh, I don't think that this is going to come together. However, I was one to say, oh, maybe he's building a team that's just going to be a contender and never really a Stanley Cup contender. And I was starting to worry about that. But I think it's too hard. It's too early to tell how that's going to go. You really don't know. Like, look at the Carolina Hurricanes. They've been knocking on the door for 5 years now, and they just don't have that player. Now, maybe with Gensel they do, but they have never really had that one player that you can rely on to put the puck in the back of the net. They're fantastic defensively. They have pretty good goaltending. They have some really good forwards, but they don't have that one guy like an Austin Matthews or just like an elite Jack Hughes, a player like that. Aho's really good. I'm not sure that he's that level, but we could have that debate. But my point is I hope that when this Yzer plan comes into full force, you get lucky with one of these players like a Danielson and just becomes like a Jonathan Taves kind of player, or like just a number 1 center, or hey, you hit on one of these wingers and he becomes a number 1 winger like a Pasternak or someone like that, because you need that if you're going to win a Stanley Cup and you're going to have success in the playoffs. You're going to need that guy to just kind of come out of nowhere and score goals. So
I'm tired, guys. So I'm gonna get your guys' final thoughts before we sign off. We're just gonna give a quick reminder that go check out Vintage Detroit Collection if you go to vintagedetroit.com. Our shirts are up there. You go to, I think it's called the Get Local tab. It's also up on our Twitter. If you go there, you can find it. We've got a exclusive collection of t-shirts with the Vintage Detroit Collection. They are comfortable, says Ryan. And yeah, that's go check them out. Go grab a couple. And we're going to be giving away, I think, a jersey soon. I've got to make up the graphics and everything for it, and it'll probably be Lucas Raymond. But I'll get your guys' final thoughts to make them quick before we sign off. Ryan,
Do you want to touch on Vintage's upcoming event?
you can in your final thoughts.
Okay, final thoughts. The 4th and the 5th, Vintage Detroit just put out, they're having an open house. So I would highly encourage you to go. Right now, the hours posted 10 to 4 p.m. Thursday and Friday in Plymouth, Michigan at the Spinnaker Center. Greg, if you have this available to toss up on the graphic, right now would be a perfect time to show it. Hopefully my
I'm not
hands
going to
are
do it
actually
just to make you look dumb.
pointing the right way towards it. But the first day they're having a food truck. Actually, both days are food trucks. Or I'm sorry, food both days. Food truck Thursday, catered lunch on Friday. Sounds like they're going to have some exclusive in-store specials to include promotions, clearance items, and more. But also our shit. Yeah, go get it. But I'll be there Friday for sure in the afternoon, and then I'm going down for the Wings game that night. So hopefully see some folks there. It's basically because of the Tigers home opener, which I believe is Thursday.
I will be there with my wife and children as well on Friday. We'll be coming home from Grand Rapids on Thursday, but we'll be there on Friday.
Hell yeah. So it should be a good time. Great people, awesome gear, our go-to for everything, jerseys, especially for any Detroit sports. But final thoughts for me, win. You got to win. Get points. I don't care how. It's got to be ugly. It's just got to happen. And please, for the love of all that is holy, Larkin come back. Already running 30.
I think that this team can still make the playoffs. I believe in it. Hopefully they can shake some things up and get a little win streak going here, because that's really what it's going to take to make the playoffs. You have some subpar opponents coming up. You have some good opponents coming up. That game against the Islanders is probably going to have a lot to do with what happens with the playoffs on Thursday night. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, those two Montreal games could be win and you're in at the end of the season. And Montreal has been playing better as of late. Nick Suzuki's kind of on fire right now. So you got the Canadians twice, you got Toronto once, you got the Rangers, you got Tampa still. So you can play your way into it. Final thoughts, and you can follow me on Twitter at SealDog91.
Yeah, my final thoughts are I love Lucas Raymond. He's fantastic. He's going to be, like I said earlier, well worth his contract that he's going to sign. I think I right now have him around the 8-year, $6.75 to $7 million range. That's on the low end. I think the 6.75. I think 7 is probably more where it's going to land. But the kid's killing it. He's shown an amazing goal scoring touch lately, and he, through this losing streak, has been one of the only players who has cared consistently on a nightly basis. And he is the one that is now saying, fuck it, I'm going to put this team on my back and I'm going to go score goals. And it's awesome to see at 21 years old. So big props to Lucas Raymond. You can follow me online at Bringing the Wing. Follow the Grindline Podcast online at Grindline Pod. We get a shout out to the Hockey Podcast Network for hosting us and spreading us around. A big shout out to, like we said, Vintage Detroit, which is the only place you should get your Detroit jerseys from and worked on. Like I said, our collection is there. Our merch is also on redbubble.com by searching the Grind Line. And you can find us on YouTube. Go to youtube.com, search Grindline Podcast, sub to us, turn on notifications. You'll get notified whenever an episode goes live. That's going to do it for us tonight. So for Ryan and Tyler, I am Greg. You stay classy, Hockey Town.